We're good. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk will be Ms. Sheila Gurry, and I'd ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. The question period sign-up sheet for agenda items only is on the table by the double doors to my left. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Council members have been granted the authority to join meetings electronically, and I would please ask you to please refer to the guideline sheet for reference. Tonight, in addition to Councillors Thorpe and Martman joining me in council chambers, we have Councillors Brown, Turley, Armstrong, Gesselbrock, and Bonner all joining us electronically. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Worship. For late items this evening, agenda item 10, consent items, we're adding the Finance and Audit Committee recommendations from your meeting on March 16th, 2022. As well, we had notice from Councillor Armstrong to remove item 15A, her motion regarding security around Caledonia Warming Centre. And one other just minor edit, Your Worship, for reports 12A, we are changing the introduction to be from Lynn Wark to Mr. Richard Harding.
Very good, thank you. A motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Martman, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Martman, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's report. I have a number of items I want to mention tonight, if I may. The first, for those of you who have already experienced it, the City of Nanaimo's Engineering and Public Works Department has begun its annual water main flushing program on March the 14th. Flushing will begin in South Nanaimo and move its way north with an expected completion the week of May the 1st, 2022. So don't be surprised if you see some discoloration in your water, but it's temporary and it's not a health hazard. Effective April the 1st this year, new regulations will come into effect for the operators of short-term rentals, STRs as they're known, and bed and breakfasts in the City of Nanaimo. And at our regular meeting, Council adopted amendments to the zoning and off-street parking bylaw that regulates and permit short-term rentals, included in the changes the requirement for a business license. We have set the start date for April the 1st in order to give people a chance to familiarize themselves with the new regulations and trust that everyone will do so. Updates to the provincial health orders were announced on March the 10th to mean the following changes for us. The wearing of masks will no longer be required, and that was effective March the 11th, 2022 for those visiting City of Nanaimo facilities or for those participating in programs, but masks will be encouraged where physical distancing is difficult to maintain. And as of April the 8th, the City of Nanaimo is expecting not to be required to check proof of vaccination to participate in programs. Facility capacities are now at 100%, including pools and arenas. Masks will still be available, however, at City of Nanaimo facilities, and hand sanitation and cleaning protocols will continue to be in place. We will continue to follow provincial health orders as we have throughout the COVID epidemic. This includes transitioning from a COVID-19 safety plan to a citywide communicable disease prevention exposure control plan. And any further changes will be reflected on the website and communicated through social media. Already announced, and hopefully people have been paying attention, Westwood Lake Park, one of the busiest and most popular places to visit in Nanaimo, is about to undergo a variety of improvements. Phase 1 will begin this year and includes improvements to the park entrance, enhanced natural green spaces, improved parking, moving some current spots to lessen environmental impact, using permeable and impermeable surfacing, and adding 36 additional spots and 4 additional accessible parking stalls. It'll be better parking lot circulation, flow, and safety features. We'll be planting additional native trees and shrubs and be integrating stormwater management areas and rain gardens to capture and filter rainwater. And there will be mobility improvements along Westwood Road for both pedestrians and cyclists. As I indicated at a previous meeting, and we're still hopeful that people will take interest in it, applications are open for the Design Advisory Panel membership. Applications can be downloaded from www.nanaimo.ca or picked up from Legislative Services at City Hall, 455 Wallace, and be accepted until 3:30 p.m. on Friday, April the 8th. The Design Advisory Panel plays an important role in what your city looks like, so I encourage anyone who's listening who thinks they have the appropriate skills to download the application, have a look at it, and consider applying. And sadly, as most of you probably know, we had a fire at the Departure Bay Activity Centre at approximately 5:30 a.m. on March the 17th. The matter is under investigation now. The building will be assessed to determine the extent of the damage. I must say, for those of you who lived in Nanaimo for any period of time, you've probably all had the pleasure of attending some event there, some celebration, some sporting activity, and as many of you probably know, I believe Ms. Gurry confirms that it is the second busiest polling station during municipal elections in the city. So we will see what comes of the investigation, but in the meantime, with the cooperation of School District 68 and the hard work of Mr. Harding's Parks and Recreation Department and many others, we are able to secure facilities for ongoing activities. And finally, I want to report something that is fun, and that is that World Down Syndrome Day is today, March the 21st. The proclamation of World Down Syndrome Day is March the 21st because the date is special, because 3-21 represents trisomy 21, the medical term for Down syndrome, which is the third replication of the 21st chromosome. And it is a request from Sandy Prezada, a longtime city employee, amongst many others, of course, that we all wear. And oh my goodness, here we are. I didn't notice that. We all wear mismatched socks on World Down Syndrome Day. I want to say that to Ms. Prezada, thank you for reminding the city that it is. And as she says, I celebrate this day every year in honor of my beautiful granddaughter, Chloe. Having seen a picture of Chloe, she's exactly that. She is beautiful, and she looked marvelous, I might say, in a pink ballet tutu. So I encourage all of you to help celebrate and raise awareness by rocking your craziest, most mismatched socks today. If you haven't done so far, stick them on. It'll make you feel better, give you a sense of solidarity and community. And look at Councillor Thorpe and I. Have you seen two crazy-looking cats with those sexy socks? And that is it for the Mayor's report. Thank you very much. We have nothing to rise and report, Ms. Gurry. And presentations, we have a presentation. Sean DePaul is here from the Regional District of Nanaimo. And yes, and it's an update on the development cost charges rate review. Mr. DePaul, there you are.
Yes,
so to speak, on the screen. Welcome and thank you for coming tonight.
Great. Okay, there's my presentation. So I'm here today with Lorna Mueller, as well from the Regional District of Nanaimo, to present the Regional District of Nanaimo's Southern Community Wastewater Development Cost Charge Bylaw Amendment. The bylaw applies to developing properties within the City of Nanaimo and the District of Lantzville. Next slide, please. So here's the outline. I'll be just giving a brief introduction on DCCs, our current DCC review, talking about two of our capital projects that are partially funded through DCCs, and our new proposed DCC rates, and then looking forward to ultimately the adoption of the bylaw and when those new DCC rates will apply. Next slide, please. So DCCs are established to offset costs directly related to new development. So when new development comes in, they connect to existing infrastructure and they require a certain capacity. And that, of course, depends upon the development type. DCCs are used to then offset that capacity requirement so that those that infrastructure can be expanded into the future. DCCs are covered under the Local Government Act, where there's rules, sort of general rules that are set out. One of the general rules is that our recommendations is that DCCs are reviewed and updated every 5 years. So that has triggered this review and update. Another factor that applies as well is a 1% assist factor. Does apply to all capital projects that are funded through DCCs. Next slide, please. The RDN applies DCCs to pay for projects that increase capacity of our wastewater infrastructure. And our wastewater infrastructure is our linear system that runs from Chase River all the way into the district of Landsville. It follows a portion of the coastline with some inland sections. We have associated pump stations and force mains. The local governments, in this case, City of Nanaimo, are responsible for collecting wastewater DCCs on the behalf of the RDN when DCCs are collected during the permit application phase. And those are then transferred over to the RDN Finance Department. The Southern Community DCCs also has an ability to reduce DCCs by 50% for approved affordable housing developments, and that's been in place for approximately 10 years, and we've followed the lead of the City of Nanaimo. So the City of Nanaimo has had that in place, and we've created a bylaw to allow that reduction as well. Next slide. So yeah, as I said, we're at 5 years. Last time it was the bylaw was adopted was in 2017. We are working with AECOM, or consulting engineers. They assisted us in 2017, and they as well are assisting us with this review. Some of the major components of the review are looking at development projections and updating them, capital projects and capital project estimates and schedule. And then through those two things, we then calculate the new rate. We review the updated DCC data and as well the bylaw. And very important that the data that we use reflects that of what the city is using. So we've worked very closely with the City of Nanaimo. Jeremy Holm, we've worked quite closely with, and his fantastic colleagues in engineering and finance have been quite instrumental in us calculating these new rates. Next slide, please. So first of the two capital projects is the Departure Bay pump station upgrade, where we will be starting our engineering design this year with projected completion in 2025. Total project cost is $34 million. We have calculated an 80% DCC funding for the project for $27 million, and this is related to increased capacity associated with growth. The 20% is related to upgrades. So you can see on the right-hand side the photo there of the Departure Bay pump station. It was originally constructed in 1973, and there is some upgrades of aging infrastructure as well as part of that project. Next slide, please. The second capital project is another capacity project where we will be starting design, and we're working on design right now with completion in 2028. Total budget is $45 million with 84% DCC funded, or $37 million, and this is related to increased flow capacity associated with growth. The photo on the right is the current routing of the force main. We're working on a routing study, and we'll look at opportunities to twin that flow so we can increase our flow into the future. Next slide, please. Here are the new rates. So the existing rates are $2,951, going up to $4,622 for a 57% increase. The remaining development categories are showing a lower increase of 48%. The reason we have the jump with single family dwellings is working with the city of Nanaimo, we've calculated, we've gone from 2.3 average persons per household to just over 2.4. So through those calculations, we've calculated that there is a little bit of a higher proportional requirement from a capacity perspective for single family units. The remainder of the categories, we've identified what the rates are based on City of Nanaimo numbers and the way that they are applied under the existing City of Nanaimo DCC bylaws. Next slide, please. Oh, one other thing I should just say as well, with those increased rates on the last slide, that they are very much in line with the increase in the requisition over that same 5-year period of time. So we are quite in line with the operation and maintenance increase in that budget. So this is the last slide. Here's the schedule. The star represents the delegation today. We are doing both northern and southern community DCCs. So we'll be going through and completing the delegations. So it'll be Qualicum, Parksville, City of Nanaimo, and the District of Lantzville. Once we're complete at those, we will be advancing a board report to the RDM board April 26th, and that will be first reading of the new rates and authorization to go to public information. Following that, we'll have public information and we'll schedule a subsequent board report for the results of that those public information sessions at the end of June, perhaps the beginning of July, with then the submission of the bylaw to the province. And depending upon the timing of the return of that submission and whether we need to make any changes or alterations to what we've submitted, we are expecting adoption to be September or October. There is a possibility that it though could go beyond that date. So that is my presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. DePaul. I'm wondering if council have any questions. Councillor Martman, please.
Thank you. Through you, I think I know what it means, but confirmation. So it was changed from square meters to, it was an abbreviation of CON. So I'm assuming that's maybe per unit? Like the mobile home park got changed from square meters to CON.
Yes, through the chair. So the calculation for the mobile home park originally was on. Wait a minute. I apologize. There is a typo here.
It's just the.
It shouldn't see square meters. It should have said connection there. Yeah. So mobile home park was always on connection, but it does say square meters. Thank you for that, for catching that. The current one is on a per connection basis, and we were remaining with the per connection. So yeah, so under the existing DCC rates per unit, mobile home park should say per connection. Oh. Thanks for catching that.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, to Mr. DePaul. Thank you, Mr. DePaul, for the information. Appreciate that. I'd like to refer to, I think it was the second to last slide on the proposed rates. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm sure the average person watching would look at the percentage increase of the rates. Most of them 48% increase, and the single family rate increasing by 57%. Those increases are significant. I'm wondering if you can provide any further rationale for those, because I'm sure people are wondering. Yes,
absolutely. So this is an increase over the period of 5 years. So as I had mentioned, actually, I went forward before actually catching that I had forgot to note the fact that our requisition over the same period of time, 2017 to 2022 has increased. We increase it on an annual basis, and it's increased, I believe, between 8 and 10%. Compounded, it equals a similar amount. So it is in line with the increases that we've seen within the service area. One of the big draws from the DCC program was the $83 million Greater Nanaimo Pollution Control Center expansion. And under the DCC program, there is a requirement. We did have to borrow some of the funds for that project, and we are paying that back as well. So that is a contributing factor to what the rates are being at in excess or close to 50%.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the information and the justification.
Is it fair also, Mr. DePaul, to say that obviously these reflect increasing construction costs as well and the inflation factor that's involved in that? I think anyone who's tried to construct anything in the last few years has watched the price of materials and labor construction costs rise pretty dramatically.
Yes, absolutely. That is an ongoing challenge. And actually, particularly for the DCC program, we are not to speculate. We're not allowed to under the Local Government Act. We have to go with these are Class B estimates in today's dollars. So we've captured the latest, and we've, particularly over the last 18 months. However, they do become out of date, and that is definitely an ongoing challenge. We were fortunate to have completed the Greater Nanaimo Pollution Control Center in a relatively good construction climate. So we have that kind of in our back pocket. It does definitely assist us. One other thing I'm going to point out too is that as well, keep in mind that this is allowing single family dwellings to connect for $4,600. Properties outside of urban areas that are not connected, it is a substantially larger amount, just from sort of a context perspective as well.
Thank you very much. I am not seeing any other questions for you. Appreciate you attending tonight electronically.
Thank you very much.
The next item are committee minutes, which are just for receipt, no motion required. And then we're on to the a motion for adoption of the consent items. And Councillor Martman, you wish to remove item 10A1. So you've moved the motion for adoption of the consent items. We have a seconder with Councillor Thorpe. Pass this and then discuss the other, or discuss this first? I can never remember.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So the motion's made on all of them, so you would vote on all of them with the exception of the one item that was pulled.
All those in favor? Any opposed? None? And Councillor Martman, if you will, please.
Thank you. And the reason that I asked for this to be pulled is for anybody in the public that's watching. We know how important that the captioning is for these meetings, but I was hoping that we could give a little bit of a further explanation as to what's happening in the process for the public to know. So through you, Your Worship, to staff.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Councillor Martman. So the report that was brought to you at the last meeting, at the Finance and Audit meeting regarding options for closed captioning outlined what's currently available. We had a chart of the ways people can have captioning available to them right now and options moving forward that we've looked into. We did look at a couple of closed captioning companies and what services they offer and had a demo. And there is some technology out there. It's not the greatest yet, but there is some technology out there that would work with Shaw TV, which is currently the only way that people aren't able to have captioning available to them is those that are at home watching the council meetings on Shaw TV Channel 4. So that was what we were looking into. was those meetings. So when we looked into it, there was a couple companies available that would work with Shaw and the requirements for the CRTC requirements. But it was noted that Rogers has taken over Shaw TV and will be changing shortly. And Rogers may have the capabilities available to it and the technologies available to it to offer captioning. So the motion that passed on Wednesday at the Finance and Audit Committee was to wait until Rogers has taken over to see what is available, rather than spending $24,000 and some hundreds to get captioning now and have an annual fee to see what Rogers has available to it, because it might not be and probably won't be compatible with the Rogers system.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry. Councillors Brown and then Councillor Bonner, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Glad this got removed. Just keeping my vote consistent, and I will be voting in opposition to this. Just to pick up the committee for the reasons I just believe. If you can, you should make things more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Same reason. I'll be voting against this. I think we should be providing this service, and we're basically going to wait a year for maybe someone to make a decision that they're going to provide it for free, but we have no guarantee of that either. And I think the people that need this service need it now, and they don't want to wait a year. So I'll be voting against it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we should just go ahead and get it done for the cost that it is, and to have the service up and running. Thanks.
Thank you very much,
I have-
Councillor Martman.
I have a further question then, because I wasn't anticipating that it would take a year. I guess we probably don't know approximately how long it would take, but through you, does anybody in staff know approximately the timeline?
Through the chair to Councillor Martman, I can't recall what was noted in the report for a timeline. So I could get that answer and get back to you, but I don't think we have a definite timeline for how long.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I'll be voting opposed to this motion as well. As the Executive stated, I think it's a small amount to pay for the convenience, and it's the right thing to do for those with accessibility issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For what it's worth, I'm a great believer in value for money, and I'm not convinced that it's worth spending $24,000 given what I presume is a pretty limited number of individuals who would actually be impacted by this, particularly as it's not a permanent decision, so to speak, and in addition, that service may be considerably less expensive in the relatively near future. And Councillor Turley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps my memory's failed me once again, but I convinced I heard during that discussion that the captioning is available on Shaw now. Is that true or not?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Turley, no, those that are at home watching Shaw TV through cable do not have the captioning available to them. If you're watching online through our live streaming and or attending via Zoom, watching it that way, then there is the capability for captioning.
So it is available, but not on that platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Councillor Gesselbrock again.
Hold over.
Hold over. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thanks, Your Worship. I voted for the option that was passed that we're rediscussing now, and I won't change my vote. I think it's worthwhile in terms of financial accountability to wait. And as I recall, I don't have the staff report in front of me tonight, but it seems to me that it stated that we would get a report within a year, and that Rogers would be in a situation to provide the service at no charge. So for me, it's worth waiting a short amount of time. I don't think a large number of people are going to be impacted, and I think it's a small but a not insignificant cost savings for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The motion then is that council maintain the status quo regarding captioning meetings in Shaw TV and direct staff to advise council once more information is available regarding the provision of Shaw TV/Rogers captions. All those in favor of the motion? Councillors Martman, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Turley. Those opposed? Councillors Brown, Councillor Gesselbrock, Councillor Bonner, and Councillor Armstrong. It's a tie. The motion fails.
That's correct, Your Worship. The motion is defeated, so I am unsure if council wishes to make a different motion at this time.
It's up to council, but I suspect we're going to go nowheres tonight in the absence of another councillor, and you can always bring a motion before council at some time in the future respecting this matter. Seeing no other speakers on this, we're on to delegations unrelated to agenda items, and we have Mr. Bernie Smith, Rue Dumont Road and Metro Drive intersection. Mr. Smith, welcome. If you can come down to the podium, introduce yourself, give us your address, and you'll have 5 minutes, and I will tell you when you've got a minute left. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and fellow council members. My name is Bernie Smith. My wife and I have lived at 6626 Everest Drive in the Pleasant Valley subdivision for the past 25 years. We're very concerned about the access to the Dumont Road and Pleasant Valley areas, particularly the Dumont Road Metro Drive intersection. We downloaded the city plans from a public meeting held on November 27th last year. It clearly showed 2 lanes exiting Dumont Road onto Metro. And as you can see, I'm not sure where my presentation is here, and I hope you don't take too much time off for me.
I'll be kind tonight,
Okay.
given my reputation for viciousness.
Okay. As you can see, the intersection now clearly shows that the plans have been changed to a single lane exiting Dumont. The right-hand turn lane has been eliminated. Please leave it up if you can.
We just had to share the screen, sorry.
You now have a sidewalk and a bike lane to nowhere. They end right where the curb ends there. I want to know, when did this change take place, and why was the public not notified in a reasonable way about this change? You know, this is not a minor adjustment to plans. It is a significant change to the 3rd busiest intersection on Metro Drive. Has council even considered the future growth of the Dumont Road area? Are there zoning applications already granted or pending? There are large tracts of land around Brandon Lake possibly available for future housing development. Other considerations: the narrowness of the traffic lanes to accommodate emergency vehicles and large-sized commercial vehicles. Oversized vehicles serving the farming and agricultural community are a concern as well. There's also the weather. There is just enough incline to make Dumont Road difficult and at times impassable with any snow or ice. The original 2 lanes gave you a little bit of wiggle room so you could get to the side and allow traffic to go around you. The new 1 single lane gives you no such allowance, and it'll cause multiple fender benders as cars attempt to exit Dumont. Common sense decisions must be based on the worst conditions that could occur, not the best. What effect will a lineup of 10 to 15 cars trying to get onto Metro have on a large vehicle turning down from Dumont or onto Dumont? The proposed 3-way stop, which I see went into effect today, will certainly not help any sensible flow of traffic with just 1 narrow lane. I believe it's also council's desire to someday extend the sidewalk bike path on the south side of Dumont Road, that's the side you see right here, to connect with the Parkway Trail. Is that true, council? You don't have to vote. However, this side of the street is completely blocked by the E&N Railroad trestle and a 6-meter high embankment. There's no way a sidewalk or a bike path is going through there. The north side of Dumont Road, however, hey, it already has a sidewalk, and it extends to the Parkway Trail. The sidewalk to nowhere can now be eliminated because it cannot go anywhere. It has to dead end in a block at the railroad trestle. Without the sidewalk to nowhere, Dumont traffic can be restored to its
One more
original
minute, Mr.
pattern
Smith.
with a turn lane. Council should consider what kind of legacy they're leaving. What will the individuals living in our house 25 years from now have to say? Hey, will it be congratulations, council, for a job well done? Or on the other hand, you know, that council had some good ideas, but by not using any common sense or compromise, they made intersections so impassable that they had to be redone a few years later at a gigantic cost. You know, unfortunately, people remember what you did wrong a whole lot longer than they'll remember what you did right. The choice is yours. What legacy will you leave? I suggest that you revisit all the Metro Drive intersections before development proceeds any further and ask, has common sense been used? Have legitimate compromises been reached? And are there any unintended consequences that might have been missed? Thank you for listening, and are there any questions?
Thank you very much. I'm looking for questions from council, and I'm going to ask Mr. Sims if I may, if no one's going to question.
If there's no questions for the delegation, we should have him sit first.
Thank you.
Have a seat, Mr. Smith, and thank you for your presentation. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Worship. Actually, it was a question from Mr. Smith, and just the question was, what would he like to see happen going forward?
Well, going forward, I think that the public needs to know or have a better idea of what is going on, and I don't like to see plans that are put out on the internet and are still available there today, and yet they've been changed, although the new plans are somewhere there as well. What I would like to see going forward is a little more common sense, you know, applied, and maybe look a little further than a pretty picture. For example, there's nothing wrong with considering the bike path down the south side of Dumont Road, but you know, you reach that railroad trestle and that's the end of story. That bike path ain't going nowhere. So you've got to look beyond, you know, what you would like to see and look at practical consequences. That's number one. And I think there are possibly other intersections as well. I wish I had more time, but I'm confining my comments to this one. I will say I think the Pleasant Valley School, which by the way my wife attended as a child as well, has problems too.
Councillor Armstrong, is your question, or Councillor Bonner, do you have another question of Mr. Smith? Councillor Armstrong, is your question for Mr. Smith or for staff? You're muted, Councillor.
Yes, it is. Mr. Smith, with you living in the area, is that road frequented a lot by farming vehicles or industrial vehicles?
It has not been in the past because with 2 lanes, there has been room to accommodate these larger vehicles. We had a 53-foot moving van across the street from us a couple of weeks ago. I would really like to see how he would navigate that intersection today.
Thank you.
And Councillor Thorpe, is your question for staff or Mr. Smith?
It's for staff, Your Worship.
Staff.
Thanks.
I think you can sit down this time,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Smith. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, and first of all, thanks to Mr. Smith for coming out and taking time tonight to express his opinions. And I will say off the top that I share some of his concerns. And much and all as I respect our city staff, I'm going to, through you, ask Mr. Sims if he could respond to some of the concerns that Mr. Smith has identified, especially for me, the elimination of the right turn lane, which I'm struggling to understand. And in fact, I raised a similar concern regarding exiting from Maffeo Sutton Park, where that right-hand turn lane has also been effectively eliminated. So, but let's stick to Metro. If you could comment, Mr. Sims, I'd be very interested in your professional response.
Mr. Sims, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through Councillor Thorpe, and apologize, no disrespect meant by the ball cap. It's the alternative is a little unpleasant. So essentially, as Council's aware, Reimagine and City Plan is taking into consideration active mobility in a large way, and Metro Drive, as you're aware, is one of our primary active mobility corridor, and pedestrian safety is key to the success of an active corridor. So the Dumont and Metro intersection particularly has some concerns, not only technically from a safety point of view, but also from the public's observation and commentary. It was overwhelmingly through our public consultation throughout the project raised as a safety concern. The sight lines, speeds along Metro Drive is a big one, and of course the grades coming up from Dumont. The challenge with the speeds, of course, is that people especially noted turning left out of Dumont on going northbound on Metro was really challenging because they weren't sure of the timing. There wasn't much space. So the three-way stop is really a solution to that, and it'll allow some slowing down of speeds. Of course, we would expect people stop and take turns just as normal. One of the concerns with when you have multiple legs, like a left and a right turn out of Dumont itself and a left turn bay on Metro, is when you have multiple legs of an intersection or multiple lanes on every leg of an intersection, it creates some confusion or uncertainty for traffic. And there, you see this in multiple locations. So if you've got a single leg at a stop controlled intersection on each leg, then people can figure that out. But when you have multiple legs, it becomes more challenging. I think the other reason for narrowing the throat is really about pedestrian safety, so that the shorter you can make the crossing distance, the more effective it is for allowing pedestrians to cross. And with the proximity of the school, of course, our primary concern is safety for children. I think sort of in reflecting the public concerns, having a three-way stop will have an increased opportunity for turns, especially that left turn onto Metro Drive. And it is a narrower intersection, but we've gotten away in the last several years in designing superhighway, very large intersections for every single vehicle, for every single instance. And this intersection will accommodate fire trucks. The fire department has reviewed all of these intersections. It will accommodate. There may be some inconvenience occasionally for large 53-foot moving vans, but Dumont Road is not a truck route, so there's not going to be an awful lot of commercial vehicle. Occasional, yes, and the intersection will work for occasional use, but we don't want to create an intersection that's so large for that occasional use. One of the demands from the public really was to signalize this intersection, and just because of this, trying to deal with this left turn. And what we found was that it really didn't warrant it. The traffic counts aren't there. The volume of traffic isn't there to signalize it. But we've protected that sort of option in the future by pre-ducting and putting some of the underground infrastructure. Excuse me, Worship. One of the concerns that we've observed and the public's expressed is often people will use Metro Drive and then cross Turner to go across the Island Highway to the easterly side, the Parkwood subdivision, for instance. because the left turn from the Island Highway onto Turner is very short and it'll only allow a few vehicles. So we're sort of broadening the scope of this work to change the signal timing in cooperation with the ministry to allow more left turns at the Island Highway at Turner. So that, will help alleviate some of the concerns that people have using Metro as that sort of throughway. I think that covers most of the comments and the rationale behind I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Change is always difficult. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not. I'll be very interested moving forward in monitoring traffic flow at that intersection and seeing how this works out. But I appreciate your fulsome response to the concerns. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Armstrong, is that not left over? Go ahead.
No, Mr. Sims, do you know how many accidents occur at that intersection yearly?
If you give me a second, I do have that information. So, Your Worship, to Councillor Armstrong, we had ICBC have a review. So there was 5 collisions between 2011 and 2017. So, yeah.
Those are just the ones that are reported to ICBC. It doesn't include the ones that aren't, correct?
Correct. There was a fairly high percentage of injury collisions, so 51%, and 3 of those 5 were rear enders, so that often leads to soft tissue injury, pardon me. And there was a fair number of cyclists involved collisions, so 6 out of 86 of the, and I'm not sure why 86 is another, or maybe this is this is the entire corridor.
So just to be clear, from 2011 to 2017, there were actually 6 accidents at that intersection.
2011 to 2017, there was 5 accidents at the end.
Pardon me, 5. And I appreciate Councillor Armstrong's question on this, that not everything gets reported to ICBC, but most of it does because you're required to do so by law. And secondly, if your injury and you wish to injured and you're the innocent party and you wish to recover for damage to your vehicle, I presume it's going to be reported. So, Councillor Armstrong, that's inspired another question, I'm sure.
Actually, you don't have to report to ICBC unless it's over the 5,000. You're going to go through it. There's all sorts that get reported to the police that never make it to ICBC. That's just one of the reasons, though. But I guess my concern is I think the throughway stop is going to create more problems, and I'm very concerned about it from a pedestrian perspective, especially because that is where the kids go. That road can get very backed up at times, and if people start to get impatient, and they may not wait for the little child that's going to cross. So is that something that will be monitored?
Your Worship, of course, this is something that will be monitored, not only now during construction, we're watching it closely, but once the road is officially opened and officially functioning, we'll be monitoring it right from day one, of course.
And there's still the option to put in lights should that be more effective, correct?
Yes, Councillor Armstrong was asking whether it's ready to be signalized, and you've indicated all the wiring, so to speak, is in place if necessary. Good, thank you. Any other questions on this matter? If not, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your presentation tonight. We're on to reports, and the first is Parks, Recreation and Culture Bylaw and associated policies. Mr. Harding, welcome and good evening, and thank you for taking a day off from your holidays to come and be here with us tonight.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to quickly turn this over to Ms. Robertson, who will run you through the report, and also Ms. Work, our Director of Recreation and Culture, is also on. But I'll just do a quick introduction for Council. If you remember, earlier in Council's term, we brought a number of reports to you, starting to do a process of reviewing and increasing and updating our fees and charges bylaw. We did a number of sessions with you. We talked about philosophy and such. Unfortunately, just as we were going to bring bylaws to you, COVID hit, and we shut down our facilities. And so for the last 2 years, we've thought it's not really the time to bring forward any fees and charges. During that time, we did the presentations. We also talked about the need for us to separate out our parks regulation bylaw from our fees and charges bylaw. So in front of you tonight is really that first step to separate out those bylaws. And with that, I'll turn over to Ms. Robertson, who can explain more of the details of how we're doing this. But I just want to make it clear to council and the public, this is not putting new fees in front of you right now. The fees will stay until a future time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robertson. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, council. So as Mr. Harding alluded to, we're bringing this forward as administrative changes, and Parks, Recreation and Culture staff and Ledge Services staff got together in December 21 and discussed how best to bring forward not only proposed user fee increases, but there are a few other issues that have been also need to be addressed, such as remotely piloted aircraft, for example, or stoves in parks. But when we looked at the existing bylaw, we saw that there was not only regulatory provisions in them, but there was the user fees, and we're trying to consolidate all our user fees into one bylaw. And also there was a council policy in there and a couple of administrative policies. So rather than trying to bring forward an amendment on a bylaw that's now 14 years old, we're wanting to deal with the structure first. So what we've done is we've kind of parsed it out. There's a new regulation bylaw that contains just the regulations. There's the amendment to include the fees and charges. Pull the policies out as they really should be sort of standalone documents. And then just to tidy it up, whenever you do those kind of changes, you then have to make an amendment to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw so that it reflects those new provisions. So as Mr. Harding stated, these are housekeeping amendments only, and will make the process much, much easier in the future to bring forward amendments. So for example, when the user fee discussion does happen, it would be just simply a user fee amendment. And you can also bring forward the guiding principles document at the same time. So the only one thing I did want to note was that under the Schedule E, which contains the council policy, I missed on item 8. It still makes reference to commission and it should say division. So I just wanted to note that. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the process that we did, or if any provisions themselves, either Mr. Harding or Ms. Ward can speak to those.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robertson. I'm looking to see if anyone has any questions. I'm confident council's read the material. Councillor Martman, do you want to move the first motion under the Parks, Recreation and Culture Bylaw section, please?
Yes, move that Parks, Recreation and Culture Regulation Bylaw 2022 number 7340, a bylaw to regulate parks, recreation and culture services and facilities within the city of Nanaimo, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any no. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Parks, Recreation and Culture Regulation Bylaw 2022 number 7340 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor?
Yes, Councillor Turley, I see.
Yes. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, a question through you to, I'm not sure if Ms. Robertson or Ms. Ward, with regard to challenges that have been happening at the facilities such as lacrosse box, covered lacrosse box, the picnic shelters, and the band shell. And I'm referring to the definitions in, sorry, I get the right page. In this said bylaw 7340, the interpretation, and it's the activity center means. And I'm wondering if those facilities would need to be added to this list, because there have been significant challenges at all three of them.
Mr. Harding, do you want to take that one?
Thank you, Worship. Just to confirm with Councillor Turley, are you referring, which page exactly are you on with the document?
I'm on page 49 on my agenda, which is page 2 under the interpret bylaw.
These are just housekeeping amendments. There's nothing that's been changed other than facilities that were no longer in use. There was a couple of them.
So, Your Worship, just this would be the fees, Councillor Turley, for those, and not the regulation side. So the regulation side of the bylaw will still allow us to deal with those issues. If there's anything that we need to do regulatory with those facilities, we can still do that under the regulatory bylaw, and this would just be the fees associated with those facilities.
The only reason I brought it up is because the title of this bylaw is a bylaw to regulate parks, recreation, and cultural services and facilities in the city of Nanaimo. So I guess I was confused that, given that it wasn't referring to fees, but if that's all it is, then that's fine.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, discussion on this matter? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Motion that Parks, Recreation and Culture Regulation Bylaw 2022 number 7340 pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Next is the Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw. Councillor Martman, please.
Motion that Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7336.01, a bylaw to add the existing Parks, Recreation and Culture fees and charges to the Fees and Charges Bylaw, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7336.01 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 2022 number 7336.01 pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. The next is Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7159.16, a bylaw to add the fines associated with the new Parks, Recreation and Culture Regulation Bylaw, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7159.16 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries.
Motion that Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7159.16 pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong this time. I'm going to let her have she's been sticking up her hand vigorously trying to let everyone know we do have 4 of our councillors who are here electronically tonight. Pardon me, 5 of our councillors. All those in favor? Any opposed? None, motion carries. And the final motion on this, Councillor Martman.
Motion that Council endorse the guiding principles for Parks, Recreation and Culture fees, charges and rentals Council policy as attached to the March 2021-2022 report by the Deputy City Clerk.
Seconded. Councillor Thorpe. Not seeing any other hands. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next item is Municipal Security Issuing Resolution / Fire Station Number 1. And Ms. Mercer, joining us electronically, you're going to introduce this. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So tonight, I will introduce the borrowing report, and then Deputy Chief Lemsourier will give you an update on the construction status of the fire station. So as council is aware, the rebuild of Fire Station number 1 is almost complete, and it is funded from long-term borrowing. And to date, we've drawn $16,395,354 of the authorized $17 million. So for 2022, now that the construction is almost complete, the final borrowing that is needed is $280,269. So as part of the borrowing application, we need a specific council resolution giving permission before we proceed. So we're here looking for this official authorization from council tonight.
Thank you very much. Deputy Chief or Acting Chief, properly speaking today.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was July of 2020 when many of us gathered here on the lawn of the old building for the new fire station's groundbreaking ceremony. As I recall, Your Worship gave lessons on driving a backhoe, and
Not one to be followed, I might add, but I did try.
and this here was the architect's rendering, and that became our vision for our new fire station. Thanks to a lot of hard work by a lot of people, that vision has become a reality, and we are excited to say that we are moving in at the end of April. In May, demolition of the old station will begin. In August, the front apron will be completed, and this will allow the trucks to respond out of the new fire station rather than from the temporary bay. And substantial completion of the project is set for October. Now, if any of you have walked by or driven by, you know that progress on the building is fast and furious, especially from the exterior. You see that. Here you can see that the glass installation is complete. We've got the cladding assembly complete by the end of March. We've been coordinating with Lubbock Lane Construction and with BC Housing on that. And the communication tower has been installed. Inside, we've got all the finishing work happening, including paint, last coats of paint, floor finishing, etc. You can see here the day room, which is on the first floor, and one of the dorm rooms that the crews will be in. Moving to the second floor, we've got millwork going in. You can see that in the new training room that's upstairs on the second floor, as well as you see one of the office spaces here as well. We're entering the commissioning phase, and that's underway for all mechanical and electrical equipment. You can see the server room, the mechanical room, and the warehouse here. And another big focus is on installing communications equipment. Here you see the Emergency Coordination Center. We've got the kitchen off of that and the chief's office on the third floor as well. The apparatus bay is here, the radio room, just off of that, as well as one of the tool rooms there that you can see. And our temporary apparatus bay is on track. This allows us to respond while the old building is being demolished. This is delivered within this project budget, and it may be used for the fire department or public works in the future. Station 1 is on budget and has an approximately 10% contingency for managing risks, and we are very excited to be moving in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our original part of that, we were to borrow up to 17 million. And this additional third draw brings us up to within 190,000 of that 17 million. Were we able to come in under budget, or are we a little bit over? Do we know how we're doing that way?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Bonner, my understanding is we are on budget, and that some of the items are funded through borrowing, and some items such as public art and things cannot be. So there are some different funding sources for different parts of the building, but my understanding is it is all on budget.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bonner. I'm not seeing any other questions. And these motions will move together, Ms. Curry, yes?
Yes, they can
Move
be.
the recommended motions.
Moved by Councillor Martman. We have a seconder. Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is item C, illegal structure shipping container home-based business regulations contravention 6630 Valley View Drive. And that's Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. We're here this evening to seek Council's support with a remedial action order for the subject property, as you mentioned, 6630 Valley View Drive, and then more specifically with respect to unpermitted structures that are on the property. As outlined in the report, Your Worship, staff have been working in response to numerous complaints from neighbors of this property to bring the site into compliance as early as last fall, and been involved with many sections in the city, including the bylaw department, the building inspections, and our licensing section. Unfortunately, even though that work has been done, we've been unable to achieve compliance. And as such, we're taking the next step, which is a remedial action order. So we're asking for council support in that order. I would also note, as outlined in the report, the licensing officer is proceeding with suspending the existing home-based business due to non-compliance. So that's a discretion of our manager of business licensing. That's not the council, but we thought the council should be aware that that step is also being taken. Certainly happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Brown. No, sorry, your hand is up. Oh no, that's a thumbs up, I guess. You're looking distant there. If there's no questions, Councillor Martman, moving the recommended motion.
Yes, please move the recommended motion.
Councillor Turley did have a question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Lindsay. So if by some decision on the part of the behalf of the proponent, they suddenly agree to do what is demanded of them, what changes there? Is there any time delays or?
Sorry, Your Worship, if I understood the question, is if the property owner decided to bring the property into compliance?
Yes.
Well, I think that would be a successful outcome and staff would not need to proceed with the remedial action order. But at this point, we've been unable to achieve that. But ultimately, yes, that is the hope, and the intent is always to bring these properties into compliance. And hopefully the result of council supporting this order will move us one step closer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Martman moving, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item D, Housing Agreement Repeal Bylaw -416 Wakesai Avenue. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. On this next report, we're asking for council to repeal an existing housing agreement bylaw. This goes back to 2016 when there was the original development for the property, and a housing agreement was registered at that time. As council's aware, when housing agreements are registered, they do require an associated bylaw. In this case, more recently, last year, council dealt with a revised proposal to the site, which resulted in a new housing agreement being required. And we've now noticed, as we've gone this far through, that we actually have to rescind the original bylaw before we're able to proceed with the adoption of this new bylaw. So a bit of a procedural step here that we probably should have picked up last fall, and we're just asking for council support in repealing that existing bylaw.
Thank you very much. I am not seeing any questions. Councillor Martman, you want to make the first of the three?
Motion that housing agreement repeal bylaw 2022 number 7344, a bylaw to repeal housing agreement bylaw 2016 number 7226 for 416 Wakesai Avenue pass first reading.
We have a seconder, Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. A question to staff, if I may. Yeah, I remember this one coming to council and us having a good debate on it. My question here is could we not have also brought in the bylaw today to put this in? Because I'm wondering, I guess my question is, since we should have got this a while ago and we still haven't got the other bylaw in, is this going to cause any delay in the construction of this property? I'm not sure where they're at.
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. That's a good question. No, it will not will not result in delay to the issuance of the building permit. We're simply waiting for registration of the agreement itself, and this is a procedural step to do that, but no, will not result in any delay.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Martman, please.
Motion that housing agreement repeal bylaw 2022 number 7344 pass second reading.
Seconded. Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that housing agreement repeal bylaw 2022 number 7344 pass third reading.
Seconded. Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next is item 13, bylaws, Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Repeal Bylaw 2022, number 7343. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Motion that Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Repeal Bylaw 2022, number 7343, to repeal Parcel Tax Roll Preparation Bylaw 2021, number 7323, and Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw 2021, number 7324 be adopted.
And a seconder. Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. The next is 13B, Housing Agreement Bylaw 2022, number 7342.
Motion that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2022, number 7342, to authorize a housing agreement securing no independent sales for 50% of the dwelling units at 6030 Lindley Valley Drive be adopted.
Seconded. Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have no notices of motion. As per the amended agenda, we have no other business. Question period. Ms. Gurry, I think we've got one at least. I'm honored, no less than the CAO's delivered. Mr. Manners, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a couple of questions. The first one is regarding the mayor's report. And my question is, why were the changes to Westwood Lake announced prior to the adoption of the consent items?
It was Mayor's report.
Yes. The mayor's report, you made the announcement about the changes to Westwood Lake prior to their adoption.
That was
We didn't adopt it today.
We didn't adopt it tonight, Ms. Gurry.
Was it not?
It's by,
Sorry.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the delegation. Under the mayor's report, you reviewed the plans to upgrade Westwood and the consultation and review and design that was presented to you at Finance and Audit on Wednesday. And so he was just reporting on that presentation.
But now they have been adopted with the approval of the consent items? Am I correct?
I believe the report on Wednesday, the Finance and Audit Committee was an update on the Westwood Lake approval, and the council approved the concept as presented for Phase 1 improvements and include Phase 2 and future improvements in the 2023-2027 draft financial plan. So yes, that was passed under consent items.
Point made. Well done, Mr. Manners. And your second is on the presentation, item 8, the RDN.
Yes, I have a couple questions on this. The first one is regarding the first question I have is regarding our screens in the auditorium. Sitting in the second row, sitting in the third row, it's impossible to see what's on the screen in front of us. Prior, we had 2 screens off on the wings of the auditorium where we were clearly able to see up to the 5th row. And my question is, could we see a return to the 2 wing screens?
Interesting question. If there's any staff who cares to comment,
Your Worship, there was just a revamp of this room and auditorium for audio and visual, and I believe the project is done at this point. And I don't believe that was part of the plan, but I could look into it and get back to Mr. Manners. But I appreciate the suggestion, and it's good to hear from the users.
Thank you. And my other question is, as the mayor asked, or the mayor stated, that the possible increase of our 48 to 57% might have been due to construction costs. Does that mean that we can expect to see construction costs be reasoning for increasing our other user fees by such ridiculous amounts?
I have your point, and I think my comment related to this concept, that DCCs are designed for the cost of connection and the servicing that goes in, and anything related to construction is increasing dramatically. What they may or may not increase by in the near future will be a matter for further public debate and discussion, but I'm simply trying to reflect the fact and advise people who are listening that the city is facing some dramatic costs already. I see Mr. Sims nodding sagely and sadly, as we are facing some dramatic increases, particularly in materials, supply chain interruptions, etc., which are all having an impact on everybody's cost, as I suspect you know yourself if you pulled up to the pump today.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Brown might have a response to that as well, Your Worship.
And Councillor Brown, please.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to add that DCCs aren't user fees, and if it's a development cost charge, and if DCCs don't keep up with the pace of the actual infrastructure costs, there is no choice but to actually raise taxes that tax the existing tax base, not those that, or it's not a funding source. DCC is a funding source that is triggered by growth. So if you don't utilize that, you're left with the choice of increased taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Mr. Manners, thank you.
Move for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment. Councillor Markman, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all, and to staff for participating tonight.